Hi, this is Victoria Nalule, and here with me is Mr. Stephen Dow. He is a senior lecturer in energy law at the Center for Energy, Petroleum, Mineral and Policy at the University of Dundee. Previously, I hosted him and we talked about gas contracts and renewable energy, and many people through their comments and through messages asked me to host him again. And this time they asked him to cover several topics, including taxation, grid and energy infrastructure, and also other comments I'll be reading out. So definitely I had to host Mr. Stephen Dow again because most of you wanted to hear from him. Before we start, I'd like Mr. Stephen Dow to introduce himself.
I'm not sure I need to, but I'm Stephen Dow. I'm Senior Lecturer in Energy Law at the Centre for Energy, Petroleum, Mineral Law and Policy at the University of Dundee. I have 20 years of experience of teaching people around the world about energy and oil and gas, and hopefully teaching a few more through this.
All right, and by the way, also his former students. He lectured me in 2013 and 2014. So yes, you definitely need to hear from Stephen Dow. So in the first video, we want to explore more on grid and energy infrastructure financing, because I understand in the previous videos we talked about energy project finance. So can we specifically now talk about grid and energy infrastructure financing?
Yeah, I think the key thing that we need to ensure in grid financing is to understand that what we're doing is we're financing the pipes and the wires entirely separately from the way we finance the commodity and its production. And the real key here is to make sure that you're trying to turn this into a financial transaction as much as you possibly can. What you want to do is take as much risk as possible away from the grid owner and place the risk with the users of the grid instead. So what you're doing is you're saying anyone can build pieces of grid. This does not mean you have to privatise a grid. It does not mean the state company can't be involved at all, although obviously the state company would finance its grid share on its balance sheet. Private financing is for private entities. So what happens is these private entities can build a piece of grid, finance it, as we'll talk about in just a second, but that piece of grid doesn't mean they have to operate it independently. There will still be an independent operator of the entire grid, and effectively what happens is the owner of this new piece of infrastructure is paid a fee, a dividend if you like, for providing the grid itself. What we're trying to do is take out the risk to that infrastructure owner. So what effectively we're going to do is pay for the grid whether we use it or whether we don't. Right? In essence, you want to make sure that the infrastructure owner is simply providing a service and is not involved in the commodity. So what you do is you have a system whereby it's effectively a sender-pay arrangement. All the users say, I will pay you some money whether we use this grid or whether we don't. The goal is to turn it into a financial transaction. This is completely different from the way you finance commodity, where in essence, the more you dig up, the more you want to be paid, or the more electricity you produce, the more you want to be paid. But in grid, the grid is fixed. We want to pay that cost. We want to share that cost as much as we possibly can over the users, but that's a slightly separate argument. But the key is to turn it into a financial transaction.
All right, thank you very much. That actually adds more on the last video you did with respect to energy project finance, but specifically this one here is tackled grid and pipe financing. It will be a short video since we covered this topic last time, and we shall move on to our next video with respect to renewable generation financing. Stay tuned.